Okay, we're going to talk a little about some YouTube drama. I'm not always happy to talk about YouTube, so to speak, as a subject of itself or feuds between YouTubers. I think, though, that the people concerned here, they represent a bigger trend in the media, though. You see, for example, the Young Turks about, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, probably became, really a phenomenon. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but definitely they took off in the wake of Cenk Uyghur's exit from MSNBC or Current TV, wherever he was before that. And for several years, they were really at the top of their game, so to speak, in the news media. Let's see, first of all, yeah, good. I'm going to probably be releasing it today. So there's a feud going on that's, I think it was simmering for a while. It was not as public as it is probably now, but I've seen several videos already about it. Especially Tommy Sotomayor's was the funniest, where he he finds out that Dave Rubin's gay. I mean, most of the guy's fucking previous content was about him being gay. It was like, and by the way, I would say that as much as I am not a supporter of gay rights, I think Dave Rubin has a fantastic show. And I think if you really want to see somebody who's done very well to, present a venue for everybody to come and learn something about every other point of view, that would probably be the Rubin Report. Last week, coincidentally, he had like a guest from the ACLU who is, she's a veteran fighter on behalf of free speech. I believe she was the former head of the ACLU, and it was a very, very good 1 hour long interview that really illustrated what Rubin's show is about. It is about defending the freedom of expression, as well as exposing people to ideas that are really, they're part of the entire pantheon of different ways people can think. So he's had on climate deniers, he's had on climate scientists, he's had on libertarians, I think he's had on a few socialists. He's had on, he's even had on neocons. The episodes that I liked the least were the ones with David Frum and John Kasich, and I actually made videos about those, criticizing them. I think Rubin's show it's still, if you want a show that really gets people to see who the people are on it, that really gives you a perspective of the person being featured and the ideas that they have, it's usually the Rubin Report. I think it's still one of the better shows on YouTube. And and people will say that, oh, he doesn't hit hard enough as a journalist. Well, that's not exactly. Every interviewer has a style. There was an interview he did with Jack Conte of Patreon that basically eviscerated Conte's whole stance. Oh, I don't discriminate on people based on their beliefs or whatever. Rubin basically exposed him as kind of this weaseling idiot, a good musician, a good entrepreneur, but not a great person for explaining exactly how his company functions and what its policies are. So here's the video from TYT, and we'll talk a little about why it really makes no sense that now of all times they're attacking Dave Rubin.
With The Observer reached out to Milo Yiannopoulos to get some commentary on a Manhattan restaurant that he apparently goes to often. And the response that he got from Milo is pretty terrifying. He says the following, and this is based on what the journalist tweeted. His name is David Richardson. He says, I asked Milo Yiannopoulos to comment for a story. His response, quote, I can't wait for the vigilante squads to start gunning journalists down on site.
Okay. So, who was uncivil again? I'm trying to remember. Was it the left or the right? You remember when figures on the left asked for journalists to be gunned down in the streets by vigilante thugs. Oh, no, right, I don't. It has consistently been the right wing that has pushed for violence and that has committed violence in places like Charlottesville. And unsurprising that Milo, in yet another desperate attempt to seek attention, gives us quote to Davis Richardson. And okay, congratulations, mission accomplished. Now we know exactly where you stand and where your fellow alt-right guys stand on issues like this.
Right.
And so spare me your crocodile tears about Maxine Waters.
I know, exactly. I mean, it's a way of intimidating anyone who opposes the Trump administration from speaking out, because we're supposed to sit back and take it. So Milo Yiannopoulos has a history of saying ridiculous, outrageous things, right? And people give him a platform. People want to hear from him. They want his opinions. That's the reason why this Observer reporter reached out to him for comment on a Manhattan restaurant. Look, I don't know the context of the story, so I don't want to be too critical, but don't give this guy a platform as a legitimate individual who should provide commentary for a story. He is not a good person. And by the way, this is not the first time he called for vigilantes.
So I want people to understand she is saying he is not a good person. Now, Milo Yiannopoulos, you don't look. I got kind of tired of the whole Milo thing. I think the guy was kind of, an attention whore, and I could like at a certain point I was like, I don't care what he says. By the way, the same thing I think sometimes of Ben Shapiro. I'm sure, as small of an audience as I have, but people get tired of listening to me. But Milo Yiannopoulos has never claimed to be doing what he does in order to be a good person. And her whole thing is, oh, he's not a good person. Well, what does that have to do with anything? And also, on what criteria do you have for being a good person? The guy is obviously a provocateur, and the whole point of his whatever the hell it is he does, he has that site Dangerous, is he goes and ask the provocative questions. He's anti-immigration. I would say that to call him an alt-righter would really be, it shows how ignorant you are of the way things have been changing in the few years, if he ever was an alt-righter.
To gun down journalists. The same message was sent to the Daily Beast's Will Sommer, who had been covering the UK Independence Party.
So look, I get it. Journalists are in a no-win situation here. Milo has been driven from restaurants, so the guy Davis Richardson logically thinks, and so does others that reach out. Hey, in the midst of right-wingers being driven out of restaurants, maybe I should talk to Milo. But you're playing a different game than he is. You're playing a legitimate game. Hey, I'm a reporter. I'm trying to figure out people's reactions, etc. They're playing a game of, I don't care about the rules. I don't care you're a member of the press. I don't care about the Constitution. I don't care about the First Amendment. If we get in charge, we're going to put on some brown shirts and we're going to go commit violence. At least Milo is unsavvy or desperate enough to make it plain, to make it clear and obvious where he comes from. Right. And what he intends to do.
And remember, one of the issues that kind of put him out in the public as I wouldn't say household name, but as a public figure, I guess, was his disdain for Muslims and his messaging regarding how Muslims are terrorists and we should fear them and they're horrible. I mean, you're advocating for vigilantes to gun down journalists. Like, I'm definitely more concerned about you here in the United States than I am about Muslims who might want to come in for travel or for immigration, whatever reason that they'd want to come in. Like, you are the person who keeps pushing the boundaries and keeps advocating for violence. You incite violence, and then you have the audacity to point to other people and claim that they're violent. So part of the reason why he had become as big as he was.
Well, I want to stop this right there. Now, one of the reasons that they're being very disingenuous is that there were several examples of Milo Yiannopoulos events that were shut down by people, and maybe they weren't shooting up the place, but there was, of course, there was the Milo at UCLA, Milo UCLA 2017, and this was canceled February 14th, 2018 because of threats of violence. He has 10 things I hate about Mexico. I mean, what? You have to give him props. He does come up with some nice provocative shit. Milo Yiannopoulos' upcoming talk at the University of California in Los Angeles this month has been canceled following a vote by the student group that originally invited them. The decision came the day that UCLA sociology professor Gabriel Rossman published an open letter to the student group in the Weekly Standard, which told the Bruin Republican members, in part, your conscience should tell you that you never want anything to do with someone whose entire career is not reasoned argument, but shock jock performance art. What the hell does that even mean? Maybe it was Milo at Berkeley. Sorry. So 15 minutes in Berkeley cost the university $800,000. Why isn't this stupid page loading? Here we go. So it turned into a free-for-all Sunday between, no, I don't want 99 cents access. Damn it. Paywalls. Oh, I think I have to turn off ad blocker. What the fuck? So they actually misspelled photo op. It's with one P. I can't have I've never visited the Mercury News this month. I don't know why it's doing this. So essentially, what happened here? Berkeley. Yeah, this was from February 2nd. Berkeley cancels Milo Yiannopoulos event after violent protests. And you can see here, this was some sort of, why is it still, damn it.
One of America's most liberal campuses, UC Berkeley. A war zone over conservative speaker Milo Yiannopoulos' appearance here. A mob set fire to campus lights, Milo's name melting. The president Yiannopoulos supports also a target here. Notable because Yiannopoulos worked for now White House chief strategist Steve Bannon at Breitbart. Anger unleashed on Trump supporters. This woman pepper sprayed during a local TV interview.
Ma'am.
She, along with at least 5 others, were injured. This wounded man, who a witness says was wearing a Trump hat, pulled out of the violent crowd by police in riot gear. Shelley Monroe came to see Yiannopoulos.
So what's that about Anna Kasparian saying that, oh, it's the right wing that's violent? Well, when Milo went to appear at UC Berkeley, it wasn't the right wing that was violent. Why would they want to throw a riot for their own speaker? When he booked the room and he needed the security or whatever, it was clearly, and that's what happened. And in fact, the Young Turks admitted at the time that was something that the left-wing protesters over there did. They violently disrupted the event. They actually pulled fire alarms. That's not peaceful protest.
Was because the media just kept having him on, right? They kept giving him a platform. And so I want to address one other thing because I think it's important.
So this is them being pissed off that other people are paying attention to someone who they don't like. Okay, and again, Milo Yiannopoulos made that comment, and people want. First of all, a lot of these people never cared when Milo's life was threatened, and he has been threatened several times. He's had to be escorted out of events that he's been at under police security because people want to kill him. So they never stuck up for him. And to be honest with you, I don't think that Milo, I think he definitely deserves a lot of criticism for, the things that he says. But, um, how are you going to criticize him for saying that, saying some sort of off-color joke about journalists getting shot when they've never condemned anybody else trying to actually kill him, actually wring his neck and strangle. He's been literally threatened several times. Okay, this is not somebody who you necessarily have to agree with in order to get some perspective about what the real problem is here. And then they put this whole "how do you not see it here" thing. Milo Yiannopoulos is not a Nazi. Okay, he is gay. He's I think he's Catholic, which is also bizarre. I think a lot of the things he does are he's sort of the Sacha Baron Cohen of the right. He's like this outlandish, flamboyant. He claims he's Jewish as well. There's nothing really indicating any sort of coherent ideology about him.
Important. Media, journalism, all of that, right, is important. And I'm not saying that because of what we do. I think that it's incredibly important to fact check the people that you have on your show. And that's not because I'm a fan of arguing or debating with your guests. It's just important that if you have...
So remember what she says. She says fact check, okay? We're going to bring that up later. Remember what she says, okay?
Have a platform and you're allowing someone to say whatever it is that they want to say. You don't want half-truths, misinformation, lies to get out there in the public. But there's this whole notion now that it's a very intellectual thing to just allow people to come on your show and say whatever they want without challenging them. That's what real journalist is. I mean, that's a real intellectual. No, it's lazy. It's because you don't know anything. It's because you're nothing more than an intellectual lightweight, okay? And a perfect example of that is Dave Rubin. So I've been quiet about Dave Rubin for years, but I know Dave Rubin probably better than anyone else in this company because we were very close friends, okay? Went to dinner at his house every weekend until all of a sudden he's not liberal anymore. All of a sudden...
Okay, just to clarify this, I don't know how long they were friends before Rubin left TYT. And from what I understand, he wasn't at TYT for as long as other people have been. But yeah, obviously there's a photo to the right of me. That comes from this tweet over here from 2014. And, there's the real, apparently it was at Roseanne Barr's house or something. So I don't think Anna Kasparian would want to be, now they're going to trot out this whole thing where Roseanne is also a Nazi or whatever. Well, now she has to explain to the audience how she was hanging out with Dave Rubin at Roseanne's house. Okay, if she wants to, how are you supposed to explain that away? Now you're trying to call Dave. So yeah, I believe that they were probably friends at the time, and it makes it all the more interesting the way they choose to do this.
After getting some funding from the Koch brothers, he's now a libertarian. We'll get to that in just a second. But the reason why I have such a huge problem with Dave Rubin is because he's had Milo Yiannopoulos on his show twice, hour-long interviews, and Milo was able to say whatever he wanted to say without any pushback from Dave Rubin, including anti-Semitic remarks. Here's an example.
Okay, let me say something first before we get to, because I've heard this video before, but he's had Milo Yiannopoulos on. He's also had John Fugelsang on, who's a hardcore left-winger. He's also had on Richard Lewis, who's basically an establishment Democrat and a funny comedian. But Richard Lewis is definitely not an alt-righter. He's had on, let me think, Brendan O'Neill, who calls himself a Marxist libertarian, whatever the hell that means. But he was an amazing guest. If you want to check out an amazing hour, you check out Brendan O'Neill on Dave Rubin, and it's good. It is really good. He's had on Lacey Green. He's had on, by the way, I actually trolled him pretty hard on the Lacey Green thing. I asked her if she would come see the University of Cox and Hull, Honduras, and Dave Rubin actually read it to her on the air. It's one of the few moments of pride that I have in my, ability to troll people pretty hard. And God willing, I'll do another one next time. Dave Rubin, you better watch out. The trolling is not over.
Well, let me take the ultimate example, what remains the big taboo in society, which is anti-Semitism, right? Most of the Generation Trump, the alt-right people, the people who like me, they're not anti-Semites. They don't care about Jews. They may have some assumptions about Jews. They may have some prejudice about Jews, like the Jews run everything. Well, we do. The Jews run all the banks. Well, we do. The Jews run the media. Well, we do. I mean, they're right about all that stuff. Now, what you do with that is the issue. But the reason they go on about
I don't even know where to start with that, so just go.
We do. It's a fact. This is not in debate. It's a statistical fact. Jews run most of the banks. Jews completely dominate the media, vastly disproportionately represented in all of these professions. That's just a fact. It's not anti-Semitic to point out statistics. But you seem to have you've missed what you agree with me on feminism. Like, it's not sexist to point out statistics. I'm suggesting to you it's not anti-Semitic to point out that these things are true. Now, the anti-Semitism on the internet.
Okay, that's not remotely true. That's not a stat. That's not a fact. And if you want to see how someone challenges that deeply anti-Semitic trope, watch my interview with David Duke, where I shred him. Okay,
the difference between David Duke and Milo Yiannopoulos is clear when you actually watch that clip. That Milo Yiannopoulos is not an anti-Semite. And I would say that he actually exaggerated what he said about Jewish banking. There's disproportionate influence by Jews in the banking industry. It's disproportionate by virtue of their percentage in society. Our percent, because I'm Jewish too. I'm not a banker though, so let me put that out there. And in the media, yeah, there's a lot of Jews in media, and Halsey News has talked about it, and other people have talked about it, and it's become a major. But this type of thing gets recycled over and over and over again. It's not going to go away. But the difference between a David Duke and a Milo Yiannopoulos is that David Duke calls to purge banking and the media and society as a whole of Jewish influence, and Milo Yiannopoulos does not. And Milo Yiannopoulos likes to, a lot of his claims are in order to provoke what I guess would be called a questioning of conventional logic. Okay, he will go and say, well, why is it that academia likes to portray such and such group as completely oppressed when it appears as if society has accomplished what's needed in order to give them the proper tools and freedoms in order to succeed? That's really his intent. It has nothing to do with the larger goal of cleansing society of either blacks or Jewish people or whatever. And the fact is that, if David Duke comes on Dave Rubin's show and Dave Rubin does not want to challenge him, he would probably get a lot of flack for it. And he would probably have to answer for it. And I think that he's mature enough to be able to react to it. But to compare Milo Yiannopoulos to David Duke, you really lose all of the context of everything that they're saying. And in fact, Milo Yiannopoulos says in that actual clip that his group, or not his group, but the people that he hangs out with and associates with, do not actually care about Jews to the point where they're anti-Semitic.
Every time he mentions a Jewish banker, I mention a non-Jewish banker. Why? Because I actually bothered to do my homework. And I know that David Duke is a monster, and that if you're going to have a discussion with him, you have to actually rebut what he says, and you have to come with actual facts. And
so he says here that David Duke is a monster. Well, David Duke has ideas that I think they're absolutely. I disagree with them wholeheartedly. I think that they're venomous and that they attack people of multiple different races. But he's a human being too, and this idea that you can characterize people as monsters based on their ideas really distorts the way that society works. You can't have this. You can't have this platform where you stand for progressivism, you stand for all of these these ideals where you grant more freedom to people as according to the way you think society is supposed to be free, and then you characterize people that disagree with your viewpoint of society as monsters, not based on things that they have done, not based on people that he's harmed directly, but based on ideas that he's propagated. Look, I remember researching when I was a kid the Turner Diaries with William Pierce. I think I didn't read the entire Turner Diaries the whole way through. It was kind of, to be honest with you, it was kind of a boring book. So, that's on me. I didn't read the whole book. William Pierce wrote the book, and people have talked about banning the Turner Diaries because it encourages terrorism. Look, the more you try to ban something, the more that creates the Streisand effect. People will look for it. People will try to find it. So their characterizing of David Duke as a monster, it creates this curiosity for him. And I think they really don't understand what they're doing when they try to play these types of tactics where they basically practice this video ostracism of people. And that's what they're doing right now with Dave Rubin.
What does Dave Rubin do? I don't know what to say about that. Just go.
No, it's actually worse than that. Dave Rubin sells it as, I'm far more intellectual, and as a result, I refuse to engage in a debate or an argument. I allow people to make their case on my show. No, you're lazy. He was lazy when he worked here. He's lazy now with his ridiculous show where he proves time and time again that he doesn't.
So this is them just doing an ad hominem attack on him. And look, this shows in many ways that they're incredibly insecure. Now the Young Turks is a big network. They have a lot of people. They have almost 4 million subscribers. I don't think that they're growing to the degree that people used to see them grow. Dave Rubin has less than 800,000, but it is growing. And I think a few months ago it was at 650,000. And the threat that he presents is that he's 100% independent. He does it all from his own house. It's all Patreon funded. And I guess there's also the whole Koch brothers thing that they have a problem with, which I guess, that's just their ideological slant. Look, the Koch brothers are an issue when you talk about, this is a belief system that I disagree with. But there's nothing that the Koch brothers do that's illegal. There's nothing that they do that is unethical, so to speak, in terms of the way that they spend their money. You can spend your money, Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian, on funding people that you like, and I'll spend it on the way people I like. And the Koch brothers, Charles Koch and I think the other guy's name is I don't know, is it Dennis Koch, some other name, some other like super lame name. They can spend their money the way they want. Nobody cares. Well, I guess the people that care are the people that don't have the money. And the Young Turks, many people have already pointed out, this was Jamarl Thomas on the left pointed this out, and Tommy Sotomayor pointed this out. They get their money apparently from that Jeffrey Katzenberg, and there are reports that they get it from Qatar, which I'm trying to confirm and I can't. But Jeffrey Katzenberg is not. When you get money from Jeffrey Katzenberg, when you have a state-of-the-art studio, apparently somewhere in LA, you're not an independent news source anymore. You're basically the same as any other corporate-funded news source. So let's keep going.
Know anything. And why do I know he's lazy? Why did he really leave the Young Turks? Can I please finally tell the truth about why he left the Young Turks? He wanted to make a 6-figure salary to host a 30-minute-a-week show when everyone here, because we work for an independent news company, was getting paid far less while working 12-hour days. That's why Dave Rubin left the company. And now all of a sudden he's getting funded by the Koch brothers, and all of a sudden his opinions are very different. He has no political identity. He is not an honest actor. He is not an intellectual. He is a fraud. Plain and simple, and he's giving platforms to people like Milo Yiannopoulos on his crappy show. That's who Dave Rubin is. And
now the second part of the Yiannopoulos story from today. Just in case if you were wondering if he's gone full Nazi, he was attacking Talia Levin, who worked at the New Yorker.
Talia Levin. I think that's the way you really pronounce her name. Let me pull up that story.
And then after she left that organization, Yiannopoulos sent $14.88 via PayPal to former New Yorker fact-checker Talia Levin, okay? Why $14.88? That seems like a curious figure, and why is he even sending her money? And by the way, she's Jewish. The 1488, known to be a combination of digits popularly used by white supremacists and neo-Nazis. 14 to represent the infamous 14 words, a mantra about securing a future for white children, and 88 to represent Heil Hitler.
Classy. Super classy.
Hey, I don't know what to say about that. Just go.
One other thing I will say is,
all right, let's see why he might have done that. Now, I agree it might have been a stupid, I wouldn't have done it because I think it's a stupid joke. I don't take offense to it, but the reason that he did that to her was because she accused an ICE agent of having a Nazi tattoo. And Tim Pool actually did a video on this. Tim Pool, who is a real journalist, unlike Anna Kasparian and unlike Cenk Uygur. And by the way, Tim Pool has also been on what's it called, the Rubin Report, okay? And if you want, I mean, I know I blow a lot of smoke here, and I'm like, but really, if there's a person who's left on YouTube that I really have the best appreciation for his work, it would be Tim Pool. So a Marine veteran's tattoo for a Nazi symbol has resigned, saying so that she's a fact checker. Talia Levin is out of a job following her June 18th tweet that caused mass outrage. I feel like I made a small mistake and it's destroyed my life. No, you didn't make a small mistake. You made a massive accusation and it destroyed your life. This is a disabled veteran, okay? And you accused him of being a Nazi. Levin's since deleted tweet was about immigration and customs enforcement agent Justin Gertner, whom she falsely accused of having a tattoo of the Nazis' Iron Cross. But the ink, ICE later explained, is really of a Titan II symbol for his platoon when he served in Afghanistan. Levin posted a mea culpa on Twitter last week and announced she quit her job. To Justin Gertner, I apologize sincerely. All I saw in you was the photo ICE tweeted and not the human being depicted. So look, I think that given this situation, I wouldn't have done this, but I would have definitely mocked this person for being such an idiot because you can't even see the whole tattoo in the photo. You can't. And by the way, when I was a kid, this symbol, the Maltese cross, even with the curved outline, the circular outline, it was used by skaters. So this could have been just a regular like skater punk. I remember this. This was something that if you were like into the skater scene back, and I wasn't, but back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the Blink-182 era, there was a brand of clothing that they used it. So this woman is clearly just projecting her own fears based on something that she doesn't know anything about.
You know, there was a huge panel debate on this show years ago where we talked about there was another flare-up in violence between Israelis and Palestinians. And there was a huge death toll involving Palestinian civilians. And when we were debating it, the issue of bombing Palestinian schools and hospitals came up, right? Now, everyone on the panel, with the exception of Dave Rubin, disagreed with that. And Dave Rubin was angry that no one defended him and his point of view. We didn't defend him because he was wrong. You don't bomb schools and hospitals, period. You just don't. Especially if you're on the Israeli side and you have defense capabilities that the Palestinians clearly do not have. And so he was angry with us because we were against bombing those schools and hospitals. But now all of a sudden, his mind has changed to the point where he's okay with someone coming onto his program and spreading, ridiculous anti-Semitic stereotypes.
So let's show the clip because here's a guy who says his main claim to fame is he doesn't challenge anything. But when you talk about Israeli aggression, he does get quite worked up. Now, if you're an anti-Semite, go. But hey, Israel does something wrong. It apparently animated him.
So again, they're characterizing Yiannopoulos as an anti-Semite. He's not. You can research it, and there's actually probably more anti-Semites, if you want to even use that term, which I usually use the term anti-Jewish person, but who cares anymore? Let's say anti-Semites. There's probably more of those on the Young Turks than there are within Yiannopoulos' organization, Dangerous.
There aren't really rules to war. We can all intellectualize the rules to war, but there aren't really rules to war. Hamas, everything they do is against all the rules of war by shooting from civilian areas at civilian areas. So they're doing a double war crime. But I don't believe there's no rules to war. That's just that's not real. Again, it's an intellectual exercise.
That was his response to the Israeli side attacking schools and hospitals with civilians in them. That was his response to it. And he was outraged that no one defended him. So that's who Dave Rubin is. The right wing loves him now because he's a puppet for the right wing. Again, he's funded by the Koch brothers. I'm not just making that up. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. September 21st, 2016, Rubin and Learn.
You don't believe in conspiracy theories unless they accuse Russia of basically dominating the U.S. political scene by hacking an election through, something you can't even explain. Like, a conspiracy theory is only considered a conspiracy theory if you can't prove the connection between cause and effect. Okay, now that's exactly what's going on with Russia. But the Koch brothers and Dave Rubin, first of all, so here this is what she uses to prove, the Koch brothers are funding him.
Liberty announced a partnership together. What is Learn Liberty? It's a part of the Institute for Human Studies, which is largely funded by Charles Koch. So Charles Koch has donated $12.4 million to the organization between 2008 and 2012. Look, he's living.
So because 6 years ago, Charles Koch used to fund these people. I mean. So this sounds like outdated information. Who knows that maybe they're still funding Learn Liberty and the Institute for Human Studies. Let's look it up. A second. So it's the Institute for Humane Studies, and Charles Koch is the chairman of the Institute's board of directors. The board also includes longtime Koch insider Richard Fink, who is an executive vice president of Koch Industries. Koch operative Eric O'Keefe is also a board member of the IHS, and O'Keefe's former group, the Sam Adams Alliance, was affiliated with the Charles G. Koch Summer Fellow Program, formerly hosted at the IHS. Now, I want to say something here. Okay, David Koch was the name of the other Koch brother. I don't care if the Koch brothers fund it. Okay, you're funded by Jeffrey Katzenberg. So as far as I'm concerned, you're somebody else's horse fighting somebody else's horse. You're the horse of Jeffrey Katzenberg fighting Charles Koch's horse. So there's no reason why I should believe the Young Turks to any degree more than I should believe Learn Liberty or Dave Rubin or whoever. And by the way, a lot of the people that are, so-called libertarians who are on the Rubin report, Yaron Brook, there's other people, Michael Malice. It's not as if the intent there is to specifically showcase everything that they do. I remember watching the what's the guy, Roger Ver, I think, the Bitcoin guy, and I was watching this show. I was like, yeah, this show is kind of it seems a bit like an infomercial. So yeah, some of it is fair criticism, but the fact of the matter is that people are intelligent enough to make decisions of their own. They can watch your show, The Young Turks. They can watch Dave Rubin's show. And at a certain point, they have to make up their minds which part of each one agrees with their mindset more, agrees with their truth and the way they see the world more.
In the life, he always wanted to make money. He's finally living his dream of making money. But if you want to get a sense of how little he really knows, just check out his latest episode with Joe Rogan. It was fantastic. And also check out his Reddit Ask Me Anything, where people simply asked him questions about his own political identity and he couldn't answer. He bombed so badly that he just ditched the Ask Me Anything. It was lovely.
Yeah, so when he was here, we let him say anything he wanted, and he got to represent any position to his heart's content. In that case, he was taking the right-wing position. I guess that was his real ideology all along.
So let me get back to that. I did find this regarding, you know, the bombings of the hospitals. Now this is not from the Israeli government. It's from the UN Relief and Works Agency, which is specifically geared towards sustaining the refugee populations of the Gaza Strip and West Bank, and also other Palestinian refugee populations in the Arab world, such as in Syria and in Lebanon, and I think in Jordan as well. And it says the agency demands full respect for the sanctity of its premises. The UNRWA condemns placement of rockets for a second time in one of its schools. Today, in the course of the regular inspection of its premises, UNRWA discovered rockets hidden in a vacant school in the Gaza Strip. As soon as the rockets were discovered, UNRWA staff were withdrawn from the premises, and so we are unable to confirm the precise number of rockets. The school is situated between two other UNRWA schools that currently each accommodate 1,500 internally displaced persons. UNRWA strongly and unequivocally condemns the group or groups responsible for this flagrant violation of the inviolability of its premises under international law. So this is the UN itself accusing the Hamas group. And actually, I don't even know if they call out Hamas by name. And who else would put these rockets in these schools? Okay, I want to ask you. So if there are weapons being placed in schools, a lot of people question, you know, should there be armed people, whether it's armed teachers or armed guards in schools in the United States. These are people who place offensive rocket-propelled weapons in schools. And then you want to claim it's an innocent target. No, because you're turning the school itself into a deployment zone for an offensive attack. You don't use rockets as a defensive weapon. Rockets are intended to attack a structure or a place of population. That's a simple function of a rocket. It's not even. I mean, think about it. When has a rocket ever been used to? You don't use one rocket to knock another rocket out of the air. That would be a guided missile. For those of you that don't understand the difference between the two, so that might have been the reason that Rubin had that opinion. I don't know, because I'm not looking that deep into the clip. The other people, you know, Jamal Thomas was not going to point that out because he's incredibly anti-Israel anyway, which you know, that's fine for him. Go ahead. But you know, Tommy Sotomayor was you know, he really found that funny, because there's some people who agree with Dave Rubin on this, and I'm inclined to agree after a long time of contemplating it too. I actually had a conversation about it a couple weeks ago, that the idea of there being you know, rules to war, being, you know, war crimes, so to speak, is kind of ridiculous, because in reality, you see the majority of wars around the planet. Forget just this conflict. Around the planet, there is no adherence to the rules of war. You go to India, you go to Pakistan, you go to countries, you know, in Vietnam, where either side adhering to the rules of war, whether it's the United States or was the Viet Cong or the North Vietnamese or the South Vietnamese. No, it's a simple fact. But nobody was held accountable for it. There wasn't any trial for any of the people that committed any of the crimes of the Vietnam War. The 1968 Tet Offensive included the massacre of thousands of civilians in Hue, which is near the DMZ, the old DMZ between South Vietnam and North Vietnam. There was never any trial for the people that were responsible for that massive killing of people.
But for everything else, he pretended to be a liberal. And now he still pretends to be a liberal while taking Koch brothers' money and giving platforms to well-known anti-Semites. BuzzFeed did a gigantic article about Milo and how he worked with both white supremacists and neo-Nazis to write the alt-right Bible for Breitbart. Richard Spencer and other neo-Nazis did Heil Hitler salutes when Milo was singing, and he did not react poorly to that at all. And the list goes on and on of the things that Milo has done. And for a guy who claims that he cares about Israel, when they're doing something monstrous, he's happy to defend them. But when you actually have a real anti-Semite right in front of you.
Yeah, Milo Yiannopoulos is not an anti-Semite. And even, you know, to the extent that it has anything to do with Israel, I think that Milo Yiannopoulos is a pro-Israel blogger, which personally I wouldn't want him on my side, except for the fact that he makes people go nuts. You know, the two have nothing to do with each other. It's conflating two issues that really have no connection.
Yeah. Saying these outrageous things about Jewish people in America. Not a word, not a peep. Well, I guess it depends on who's paying you, right? 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.
So this is the face of two sour-faced idiots, you know, that they're jealous that Dave Rubin has an appropriate degree of success. So they decide now that Dave Rubin had, you know, one of his guests, Milo Yiannopoulos, was embroiled in something that had nothing to do with the Maryland shooting. They want to pile on him because it happened to be that like a day later this happened, and this was after Milo Yiannopoulos said, "Oh, Milo Yiannopoulos' stuff is ridiculous. It's a lot of it is kind of definitely shock-inducing. You know, it's clickbaity or whatever. But he also has the right to put whatever the fuck he wants on the internet, so long as it doesn't directly threaten other people or violate any laws, and he hasn't. And by the way, what he said was in reaction to a question. So we don't know what the tone was. We don't know what the context was. We don't know what it was basically, you know, this was a hit piece done first and foremost on Dave Rubin, but second of all on Milo Yiannopoulos, using again like a lot of the misconceptions about him that exist. And they were saying, well, the real problem with Dave Rubin is that he doesn't challenge people. He doesn't challenge, and he's not concerned with the truth. Well, TYT hired Dan Rather, and this is a person who has a checkered past with the truth as well.
Good evening from New York. I'm Dan Rather. And if you're wondering whether it feels good to say that, well, it does. But this is something new. A newscast airing weekly on Monday nights. An old TV newsman leaning on new media to connect with our future. A collaboration between two organizations, my own News and Guts and the Young Turks. By the way, you may catch me talking with the team here off camera sometime during our newscast. We're low tech, but we have high aspirations. This is an answer, our answer, to what TV news has become. By the way, this is my actual office, my old partner's desk that I treasure. No bells, no whistles. We're going to try to give you news, analysis, and commentary with as much context and perspective, including historical context, as possible, on stories that matter to the real lives of real people. I may sometimes tell you what I think, not what to think. I seek not to persuade you, but to inform you. We're launching this venture 2 days after the one-year anniversary of President Trump's inauguration. 1 day after the anniversary of the first Women's March. We'll close with my thoughts on why we're doing this and why we're doing it now. But we begin with the end of the 2018 government shutdown. Excuse me, the end of the first 2018 government shutdown. Today's deal to fund the government extends for only 3 weeks.
So look, we're not going to go into his entire thing, but this was the reason that Dan Rather is now on TYT and he's no longer on CBS. Okay, Texas Monthly has a very long and thoroughly researched report detailing the story behind former President George W. Bush's Texas Air National Guard service and the fallout it had for Dan Rather and CBS News. Most of the story examined Bush's Air National Guard record and tries to figure out how the forged documents came to be at CBS, while also examining the real story behind them. It also details some of the behind-the-scenes machinations at work at CBS before the now infamous 60 Minutes report aired. The morning before the broadcast was scheduled to air, CBS showed the memos to the White House for a response. Dan Bartlett was the network's contact. Before Bartlett was interviewed, he emailed copies of the memos to Albert Lloyd, Bush's longtime National Guard expert. In an interview in 2008, Lloyd told me he immediately recognized them as forgeries. I looked at them and I said, "Don't do a damn thing with these because these are fake." Bartlett, however, appears to have ignored Lloyd's assessment. When asked by CBS whether he doubted the authenticity of the memos, Bartlett replied, "I'm not saying that at all." Adding that he only questioned the timing of their release. His interpretation of the memos, in fact, was that they reaffirm what we've said all along. When the panel report finally came out in January 2005, it did not determine whether the documents were real, but it did blame Mapes, that's Mary Mapes, his producer, and 3 other CBS producers for failing to properly vet them. CBS fired Mapes and asked the 3 others to resign. All 3 threatened to sue and were subsequently paid settlements to stay quiet about the story. Rather, was spared. A humiliating forensic examination revealed his virtual absence from the reporting process, but he agreed to resign from the CBS Evening News in the spring. Mapes went home to Dallas and began writing her book-length defense. Now, I want to say this, okay? What they ended up doing with this was to create this concocted nonsense called, one second. There was a film made in 2015, okay, and it was called Truth. It was with Kate Blanchett playing Mary Mapes. You know what? Let's play the trailer. I'll try to do this as quick as I can.
Why did you get into journalism?
Curiosity. Why'd you get into it?
You.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you my friend, Dan Rather.
I'm the producer. I put the team together. We have Lucy Scott to run point. Colonel Roger Charles worked Abu Ghraib for us. Mike Smith was a researcher for us back in 2000.
What's our next move?
I might have some...
So they picked Robert Redford, who looks, even at his super old age, looks much better than Dan Rather does. Doesn't look anything like him. They choose him to play Dan Rather.
Something for the election.
The President of the United States may have gone AWOL from the military.
He never even showed up.
Those parts of his file they didn't like, they tossed in a wastebasket.
Do you have these documents?
These really are the holy grail of documents.
You've got 3 hours.
We're out of time.
Start outputting. Go!
Go, 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 go!
Tonight, we have new information on the President's military service.
Here's to a great story.
Hey, Mary. These blogs are saying that the memos can be recreated in Microsoft Word.
Several experts have raised serious questions.
They're going to start an investigation.
This is bad.
They do not get to do this. They do not get to smack us just for asking a question.
They want to talk to your source.
No, it's bad.
I never should have asked a question.
You gotta make your case, honey. You have to fight.
Somebody has got to confirm those memos.
This isn't a trial. This is a hunt.
What we are talking about is you bringing your politics into your reporting.
I did nothing of the kind.
Where does politics not enter into this?
Our story was about whether the president fulfilled his service. Nobody wants to talk about that. They want to talk about fonts and forgeries. And they hope to God the truth gets lost in the scrum.
Okay, this is pure propaganda, because it's saying, look, when you bring together a question and you question somebody's record, okay, you have to bring some sort of evidence to it. And what Dan Rather did, you know, with the help of this Mary Mapes and other people, was that he received documents that appeared to they appeared to show that George Bush weaseled out of part of his National Guard service, and that this Colonel Jerry Killian was able to substantiate that, and that they stifled any discipline of it. It's kind of a longer story. We could probably talk about it at a different time. But there ended up being no proof that George Bush did anything of the kind. And in fact, there have been reports that Bush attempted to request a deployment to Vietnam and didn't receive it. And I'm somebody, I never voted for George Bush. I probably would not vote for him if he ever ran for office. I didn't think he was a good president. I think that he, you know, whatever people say, oh, he's a nice guy or whatever, I don't care. You know, I don't vote for people because they're nice people. Okay. So that's it. I want you to remember what the point of the Young Turk story was. First, they wanted to say that Dave Rubin is clueless. They also wanted to say that he's lazy, and they also wanted to say that he's greedy. And that's the way that they relate to people who, you know, Dave Rubin left the show. I think he said a few things that are, you know, critical of the Young Turks. He never personally attacked Anna Kasparian or Cenk Uygur, to my knowledge. Okay, if I'm wrong about that, I mean, you're free to put it in the comments or something, or let me know. Send me an email. My email is below. Please comment on this video, share the video. You know, what's the other one? Like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll talk to you guys later. Hopefully we'll talk again this Sunday.